All right, welcome to our third day of budget workshops. We'll be starting with community programs.
Good afternoon. I am Lori Peretti. I'm the coordinator of community programs, which encompasses the youth, adult, and senior of Niskayuna. Julie and I have been extremely busy this year with increased activity in all of our programs. For summer employment, we employed 102 residents, and that is between the pool, summer playground program, and soccer referees. Registrations to date for 2023 is 2650, and that does not include free events such as the Bunny Parade, the 100-yard dash, movie night, and concerts at Town Hall. This is an increase of 15% from last year, and with some of our programs having wait lists, that being pre-K soccer and our playground programs. The programs we still have for the remainder of the year, because I'm not taking my foot off the gas, are the Fall Fun Run, which is this Saturday, Halloween Parade, Toys for Tots collection, Things of My Very Own Gift Tree, which is one of my favorites, the tree lighting, and Parents Night Out. Grants we've received this year are $9,000 in total, $1,500 from SIP, which is the community grant for our concerts, $5,000 from Niskayuna Community Foundation for our AEDs, and $2,500 from the Youth Services, which helps supplement our playground program. At the Senior Center, Linda, Edie, and Robin have continued to knock it out of the park. Attendance on the low end is 50 coming on Tuesdays and can go up as high as 100. Thursdays are a little slower. This is for various activities such as lunch, exercise, crafts, and lecture. There's an increase of attendance in everything that they have done this year from last year. Increase on Facebook to over 500 members with strong traffic daily. And also we've added non-meal program days as well. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, they also have programs, which in the past it was just Tuesday and Thursday. It's quite the place. My goals for 2024 is to keep everything new and fresh, or keep new and fresh programs coming and events, and continue to serve the residents of Niskayuna like I have for the past 14 years. I have a lot of ideas, and I'm hoping to get some additional help in my department to make these dreams a reality. Thank you to the board for all of your continued support for our department. Okay, and then my budget starts on page 9. All right, I'm going to start with the community programs admin. There is a big change in this line. The first one being personnel, full-time. We're hoping to get another person in my department. With the loss of an employee 2 years ago, we have struggled to make it work. We have made it work, but it's been a challenge. And because of this, we haven't really been able to grow as much as I would like. So I am hoping to add another full-time person in our department so we can take on new challenges and add new programs and do new things. And because of that, you'll see a decrease in the part-time line, which was that placeholder that we had for the position from 2 years ago. And I believe that's the only big change, right? Yep, in the admin department. Next is the community center, which there is no change. That's page 10. Then we go to page 11, the town pool. This is we've decreased it a little by $1,600 with a decrease in personnel services for the concession stand and concessions. And this is because our new staff at the pool has been great at keeping everything tight as far as scheduling people and also ordering stuff for the concession stand. Come August, she knows I'm not going to order Skittles because I've got a ton of M&Ms. So she figured out how to use the budget and didn't overbuy. So amazing. The swim team has a decreased amount of $2,500. The driving range, there's an increase.
Why was there a decrease there with the swim team?
It's just based on actuals of what we're seeing with payroll.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. At the driving range, there's an increase in our miscellaneous and contractual line, and that is because the netting that is on the right side, I don't even north, south, whatever, is a disaster with big holes and really needs to be replaced for safety purposes, as well as maybe possible more, getting some more golf balls. For fall youth rec soccer, there is a slight increase, and this is due to the increased number of participants. So we have to get more referees and then again, more jerseys. So, but in turn, we end up making more money because we have more registrations. And spring soccer, there's a decrease, and that's just because it's not as well attended because of other competing sports like t-ball and lacrosse and baseball. But it's still a very popular program. Our youth playground program has stayed the same. Youth contractual programs, there's an increase, and I'm going to have to say it's because of insurance. Yeah, insurance has killed us, but we need to have it. And then we go to page 13 for community events. I do have one request for the farmers market. They have seen a decrease in attendance, and they would like an addition $1,000 for advertising. Our blasts are wonderful, but we're missing people. And we think by getting something in the Nishi Journal, maybe having more events like concerts or singers might draw more people to our wonderful farmers market, which is outstanding anyways.
Do you think that their time frame that they have that is right? Because I came by last weekend and obviously the weather was terrible, and it was the last weekend, right? And it was not well attended.
I think that was definitely because of the weather. Other weekends have not been like that, right? No, vendors all around. Last weekend was just unfortunate. And I talked to Libby, and she said that was the first rain issue in 5 years. So it's been pretty good.
Okay.
Usually we have vendors going from the flagpole area.
Yeah.
wrap
All the way
around
around,
No,
yes.
I know.
Gazebo.
But last weekend,
Oh, yeah.
there were like
There's
three
only, I
or
think,
four.
three or four, yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
came
but
over
that
just
was the
because we
rain.
needed apples. So
Well, and it gets later in the season too, right? You know,
It is.
and you're more subjected to weather, I
Right.
guess.
Cold
Yeah.
and rain.
Yeah.
all right. So for senior
And
recreation,
I think it's one
Oh,
more
sorry.
week, isn't it?
It is.
there's this
One
week is
more?
the last week.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
one
well, I
more.
misspoke. I
One
thought
more.
it
So this was the first rain for this year as well. So yeah, other than that, it's been wonderful. Just we'd like to boost the traffic. And then we were also thinking that maybe, on a side note here, if I have extra money in my concert line, if we have some rainouts on Thursday nights, maybe have a concert playing over here so we can kind of tag team and just get some increased traffic. Okay, next is senior recreation. And you will see the increase and decrease in the full-time and part-time lines because of the new assistant and the placeholder. And as far as the meal program and the trips, these were based on actuals. Correct, Beth? Okay. And I think that was the only change that I saw. And for adult recreation, just a slight decrease in personal services. But I will say now that adult basketball is back, we were able to get back into the high school, that they may go back up again. Yeah, we were out for a year. And I think that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions? I know I was talking fast.
No, it's all right. Are we going to go to your other lines? We have, I say revenues,
Do
but
I
we
do
do have
revenues as
revenue
well?
lines.
You can, we kind of touched on it with some of you. I'm scheduled to do revenues at the end today for everything if you want, or if you have specific questions about Lori's program.
What page would that be on?
I do
Never
not
mind.
either.
18.
18, I believe.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't even look at the revenues because I thought it was going to be covered later. When Beth looks at the revenue, she usually matches it against the expenditures, because I will say that our department always makes, for the most part, except for maybe the pool, makes money on everything we do. So I have everything priced accordingly but fairly. And it's a great price, but yet there's a little factored in to take into account that we have to use an online registration program. But other than that, we make money on our programs. Small amount, but still money nonetheless.
Yeah, there's not a lot of changes there that I see in the lines.
And I will say sometimes, because if I have say have to add another session of tennis because we have a wait list, you'll see my revenues increase as well as my expenditure. So it will always work itself out.
Relatively even, right?
Absolutely. I'm trying to see.
You got a lot of lines in that departmental income.
There's a lot going on in that department.
Well, I've been in support of adding additional person to your department.
Yes.
I see the needs weekly. We've got a lot of families
Mhm.
who have children who want programming and they want camps and sports and you deliver a really great experience for a lot of the youth
Thank
in
you.
our town. And so, I'm really excited about that. I'm excited to see you be able to put new programs together, not just for youth, but for adults
Absolutely.
as well and seniors.
Mhm.
We've talked about potentially a slow pitch co-ed softball adult league in the future,
Pickleball.
pickleball.
league.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a lot of ways that we can engage the community. And I
Right.
think having that additional person in your department will not only support current programming, but allow us to expand because that's a lot of what people, they move here for the
Absolutely.
parks,
Mhm.
the programming, the schools. So, I was a big supporter of adding that
Thank you.
person to the department.
Yeah, this person would also help because I will say, there's a lot of administrative work that I do.
Mhm.
Bank recs and I just civil service packets, 92 of them this year, which is, getting it in the system, tracking these kids down, making sure they get them finished. So it's not just like, oh, running a program. There's a lot of paperwork behind it. So
Yeah.
another person would be a huge help.
And working with the different youth programs
Absolutely.
in town, having someone, a liaison to work with these different programs. And we simultaneously are adding a grounds worker in highway and parks to help maintain our fields and our sports facilities. So I envision these two departments continuing to work very closely together
Absolutely.
to meet those community needs.
Absolutely. I work very closely with Ray and his department. It's
Mhm.
amazing. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Does anybody have any questions? No?
No, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
All set? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're moving on to water and sewer.
Okay.
Thanks.
So it seems like there's a sort of a format going with a little bit of a background of what we've done, accomplishments in 2023 and plans for next year. So my name is Matt Yetto. I'm the superintendent of water and sewer, town engineer for the town of Niskayuna. I oversee our departments are the engineering department, water and sewer, maintenance division, the water plant, the sewer plant, and the closed landfill, as well as the transfer station in town. In 2023, at our water plant, we began a large-scale upgrade of the existing controls, pumps. Most of the treatment practices at the plant were touched by this upgrade. We put in new chlorination, much safer chlorinators for the gaseous chlorine. We put in quite a few building modifications to improve the efficiency of the operations. We replaced and are still in the process of replacing electrical gear from 1965. So it's served its well past its useful life. So we're modernizing the controls, the alarming, the remote access for the operators so that they can have a better understanding of what's going on at the plant rather than just getting a phone call and then coming in and guessing what they're going to have as an emergency they have to respond to. We've also done quite a bit of work at our wastewater treatment plant. We've finished over the last few years an upgrade at that plant as well, but we made a lot of changes in-house to the new equipment so that it was more user-friendly. We corrected some of or modified some of the equipment that was installed as part of the upgrade to increase the ease of maintenance and operation. And I think bringing in the staff at the plant was very helpful in seeing what their concerns were, and we addressed some of the changes that they had requested. We also began to increase the amount of organic waste that we take in from the outside as part of our organic waste program. We recently were able to bring the biogas system back online to utilize the methane that's generated by our digesters to power certain pieces of equipment at the plant. We did some very important maintenance on some of the equipment. One thing to keep in mind, and the thing is same thing going forward next year, this equipment is very sophisticated, so we have to do the maintenance that's required. So there's cost to do maintenance to save and to keep the useful life going for the new equipment. In the water and sewer maintenance crew, we installed 9 automatic flushing hydrants throughout the system in the water system to help improve water quality throughout the various parts of town. We flushed and maintained over 1,300 fire hydrants. We do that every year. And we did the annual maintenance and repair on 19 sewer lift stations, which are throughout the town. Quite a bit of electrical work and mechanical work is necessary to keep those running as well. What else did we do? We purchased a new camera truck, a TV inspection truck for our sewer crew. It's replacing a 15-year-old piece of equipment, which has served us well. And I'd like to sell that this year at a point where it still has a decent value to it. And now that we have the new truck in hand, it was delivered just 2 days ago. So we're happy with that. We also purchased a new 10-wheel dump truck to replace a 2008 Mack dump truck. We'll be selling that truck off at some point in the near future. And we worked hand in hand with the highway department collaboratively to repair manholes, rebuild manholes, valves in conjunction with their paving work, which is a big part of our annual work, is just keeping up with the highway department and working with them so that when they pave a road, we're comfortable with the utilities that are underground, so that they're not paving something that we're digging up a year later. We also purchased one service truck for the crew. I'd like to purchase another 3 next year. We got out of the habit of replacing a lot of our trucks. We're using them as long as we possibly could, but we have quite an old fleet, and as going back to about 15 years of age for a lot of our pickup trucks. So I'd like to, over the next several years, begin replacing some of those older trucks. In the engineering department, we worked with the water and sewer maintenance crews to update all of our mapping that we have. We've modernized the mapping. We went from 200 scale paper drawings, 32 separate drawings for the entire town, and it's all digitized. We now have GPS locations for all of our valves, all of our hydrants, manholes, accurate to within 3 centimeters. So we can, and the other big part of this project was we utilized the county's SIMS program, which is their internet mapping, which is free. Each town pays an amount every year to have access to it, but we're piggybacking on that, using that that framework to allow our crews to have access to all of our data in the field now with no additional cost to the town. So rather than host our own server and do it all internally, we're utilizing our Google Drive and the Schenectady system, which will be very useful for our crews. They can go out in the field with a tablet and pull up record drawings from 1972, and they know exactly. They have distances measured from 3 points, and they can triangulate and find buried valves, and it's very useful. All this information was trapped inside offices at some point, and no one had access to the information where they really needed it out in the field. So this is an effort from Jan Bolke in my office, Nick Blowers in our office, and then also the water and sewer crews. It was it's been a long-term project, and I'm very happy that we were able to roll it forward. So next year, I'm going to be asking for some tablets to allow them to have access to this data. Right now, they can use their cell phones, and we have a couple of tablets that we're using, but I'd like to have at least a tablet for each of the supervisors and then the on-call personnel. And I also like to thank Seth, who was very instrumental too in getting this moving forward as well. And one other thing, we started the design process to replace the water main on River Road between the GE Circle and Blatnick Park. That's about a mile worth of pipe. Have an engineer that we're working with right now. They're developing plans. We hope to go out to bid next year sometime. So I guess I start on page 4 of the budget.
I think you also forgot all the in-house engineering you've been doing. You have done a really great job helping us move many of our grant projects forward for park improvements. So don't forget to mention that.
Okay.
You helped us immensely with the engineering for the new splash pad, and just working with Ray, Lori, and Laura to put all the moving pieces together. We're very glad to have such a good, competent engineer on the staff, and so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I reminded me of one more thing too. We've been working with the highway department and planning to address drainage concerns and issues throughout the town. So we're looking at it from a more, and then actually the changes to the separate drainage districts will also be very helpful. But to look at a more large scale drainage study for the town and understanding how the stormwater affects all the different sections of town. So, all right. So, engineering line, all of our lines here. My areas are all scattered throughout the budget, so I'll start with the engineering. Not much of a change here.
What page, Matt?
4.
Thank you.
So there really hasn't been anything, just sort of carried over past levels to this current year. Any questions? Okay. The next section jumps to 14, which is the storm sewers. So if you look there, I requested a student worker. We used to have 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 engineering interns in my office. Partly due to COVID, we didn't want to bring outside people in, and then just availability of applicants, we sort of got away from it. I want to get back into doing that because there's a couple of big things coming up in the next year that we need to address, and having an intern would be very helpful.
Is this where the engineering services, we need to look at something for the drainage study?
So this is where, This is the section that once we consolidate the drainage, this section will actually be pulled out of the general fund budget and put with the drainage. So it'll be a consolidated drainage and storm sewers. So, and that's where it unfortunately does not reflect well because they're all piecemeal in this format of the budget. But once, if that consolidation does go through at the end of the month, I will be ripping apart the budget and reassembling it basically with that in consideration.
Good,
So, yeah.
because it's really, really important. I want to see that drainage study budgeted for. Thank you.
So the student worker in this case, that portion of that would be for our MS4, our stormwater requirements with New York State. We have to do annual inspections of our all of our holding ponds, and also a minimum of a third of our outfalls. Anywhere a pipe discharges to a stream, and it's forever. We have to keep doing this. So in the past, we used interns to do this. Over the last couple of years, Dan, myself, and Nick have been doing that, and it's really a better suited to an intern because it's just sending someone off for several days in a truck, taking photos, making notes. It's something that an intern can easily do, and it's a good experience for them as well. And then I have on there a tablet for the mapping, so that the same process, the same GIS GPS system that we have set up, we can utilize that for stormwater as well. The next one is on 15. This is the transfer station. The only big change is the disposal fees, and that's driven by our contract with county waste. So this year we went part of the year under the old contract and then part of the year on the new contract. So that's carrying over. So the disposal fees.
So we contract with county waste to dispose of the waste we collect here.
Yes. Yep. They haul it.
And I'm assuming there's a transfer station that's run by county in
Schenectady County has a
Right.
transfer station, but this is actually
County
not.
waste.
This is county
It's
waste.
a private company
Private
that
company.
hauls it for us.
Yes, and their fees have increased.
Yes. They increased, was it last May? I believe? Yeah.
Yeah, about almost halfway through the year.
Mhm.
And they had held it for, I think, 3 years prior to that. So it was expected. At some point it was coming.
Is that contract put out to bid, or how often do we reevaluate that?
I don't think we put it out the bid this last time. It was just a renewal. That's something we can look at before we go forward. So this would be worst case.
I mean, I'm just thinking that's a pretty substantial increase. If we were to put it out to bid, maybe it wouldn't necessarily be a substantial increase like that.
That's something I can definitely look into.
How long have we had a contract with County Waste for that?
It's been, I think, about 5 years. We used to haul it ourselves, and it put a lot of wear and tear on
Wear
our
and tear on
equipment.
vehicles.
We used our own truck.
Mhm.
We're trying to save that truck just for sledge hauling at this point. We would have to take people from the water and sewer crew to haul.
Right.
And it was really a lot of moving money around to try to cover, because they were doing general fund work and not water and sewer work. So this was a cleaner, and at the time it was a better deal. Any other questions? I put a note down to look at going out to bid for the hauling.
Thank you.
Yep. Next one was on 16, which would be the landfill maintenance. The one big change there was one that was requested by Ray. It was the mower for the landfill cap. Our typical costs that we see on the landfill maintenance would be the operation of the leachate pump station. We have a pump station that pumps anything that soaks through the landfill back out to the sewer system, then it gets treated at our sewer plant. That pump station can go 5 years without any need for any major work on it. So we keep a little bit of money in there for maintenance. Some years we don't use it. It all depends on what happens at that plant, that little pump station. We were looking at possibly going and hiring a company to pig. It's a term that they use for cleaning out of the force main that comes out of that pump station. But I think it was at $35,000 to do that, which the last time we did it, I think it was $12,000. So I'm looking at some in-house ways that we can do that cleaning without hiring a company, and it would just utilize existing equipment that we have and just use our staff. So I've removed it from the request for this year. If it doesn't work, we'll see. But we see the effectiveness of the pumps go down over time. We use more electricity to pump the same amount of liquid as the line gets plugged up. It plugs up with just deposits. So so right now we won't need to do that, but maybe next year, but hopefully not.
So much like a highway department, you're going to try to do it in-house.
Yeah, we have pumps that we pump at a faster rate. We might be able to scour the pipe because the pump station was always sized a little bit. I don't want to get into too much detail. I'll wait. I'll explain it to you, Bill. I'm sorry.
No, my point was that
In the
you're trying to do it to save money
Yes.
for the
Yep.
town.
And the nice thing too, that he's kind of alluding to here is we're kind of keeping the amount overall balanced for this section because last year we had the money in there to pig, but then when we thought 20,000 would do it based on the fact that it had been 12 previously, when it came back at 35, Matt started trying to get creative and figuring that out. This allows us to budget this time for the mower that the highway is looking to keep up with the low mow with the invasive species. And then if we're not able to do the pigging in-house, the next year we can put the money back in to deal with something, so we're trying to, rather than have huge swings, we're trying to keep it even and account for all the different work that needs to be done by kind of spacing out which aspects of work we're doing on a given year so that we're kind of coordinating between the different departments and just trying to keep that nice even balance on it so that it doesn't cause a sudden spike.
All right, any other questions? Good. Okay. Next one jumps to 28. Yeah. It's sewer 1. And the only major change there will be the postage for the utility bills because in the past sewer 1 residents did not receive a utility bill. They just had a water bill. So now that they're going to be receiving a utility bill, they get charged for some of the postage. Next is 29, which would just be continuation of sewer 1. This would be the collection system. Once again, I also asked for summer help. These would be the summer helpers that would work on the crew, just mowing, weed whacking, things like that. That would save us from using a utility worker, water sewer worker to do that type of work. It's something we can have a college age student do for us. It saves us time and frees our people up to do other things that are more important.
Now, did we have something in last year in the equipment and capital outlay that is not there this year? 22 and 24's number are about the same, but
Yeah.
23 was substantially higher.
That was the 10-wheel dump truck and the camera truck we purchased
last year.
last year. Yeah, that's why it's gone down. But we are asking for 3 pickup service trucks with plows and some money for some pump station upgrades, just keeping the pump stations in tip-top shape so that we don't have any issues with the pumping of the sewage. And like most of my purchases they're spread. So even though that's 3 trucks, that's 15% of the cost of 3 trucks applied to sewer 1 because that truck is shared by sewer 1, sewer 6, and water 1. So sewer 6 would pay 35% of the bill, and water 1 would pay 50% of the bill. So that's why it doesn't really add up to 3, but it's 15% of 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's carried through on all the different lines. Any other questions? Okay. 30, it's treatment and disposal. We're still in sewer 1. So most of that cost is just paying the city of Schenectady, because sewer 1 flows into the city of Schenectady for treatment at their plant. And then the employees, that I think that just reflects the negotiated rates of pay increases they received as part of the new contract that goes in effect in the beginning of the year. So. All set on that page? Okay. Next one is the revenues for sewer 1. That's driven by the rates. Good. Any questions?
I'm glad to see the rates right here in the budget.
Thank you.
Well done. It was a big step we took, and it was a good step. It was the right thing to do, and it should have been done. And we made the hard decisions to do it, and I'm glad to see the rates here where they're supposed to be.
Jumping on the next page to sewer 6. Administration. Not much has changed, just some of the costs has gone up for some of the software that we use for the administration of the district. Next page. Similar to in sewer 1, we have pump station upgrades. You'll see that in the capital equipment capital outlay line. The same 3 pickup trucks spread out across this fund, and we have a sewer septic hauler that we use. It's currently we had a 1997 Freightliner dump truck that we converted to a septic pumper probably close to 10 years ago, I think. The equipment that's on the back of that truck is in mint condition. It's been taken care of very well, but it's still being driven by a 97 chassis. So we originally wanted to take our 08 Mack that we wanted to, we've just replaced with the new truck, the dump truck, and convert that one, but the chassis doesn't seem to work. So I think we'll be better off to sell the dump truck and get the full value for the dump truck and buy a used chassis. The 97 is still working. It's starting to show its age, but we'll just keep an eye out for a good deal on a used chassis that we can convert over to our septic hauler. In the meantime, the other truck still works, but I think we get more bang for our buck if we sell the dump truck as a whole truck rather than just piece it out and try to sell a 97 chassis. So that's in there, a portion of that, because that would be split between sewer 6 and sewer 1. That's all there. Let's see. Jumping to treatment and disposal on the next page, which would be the sewer plant. I'm looking to purchase a pickup truck to replace a very old truck that's down there. I think it's more than 10 years old, has some issues with it. Rather try to sell it while it still has some value to it. And then at the water plant, I mentioned it, you'll see it down below too. At the water plant, water tower, and at the sewer plant, the gate system, the access and security system that we have for the gates needs to be updated. It's old. In some cases, we're just using locks and chains. We had a good system at one point. I'd like to get all the 3 locations set up with a good system that can track who's entering each facility and then also alarm based on the access. So I put that in there as well. I think it was 15,000 for each one of the locations for the sewer plant, water plant, and the water tower site.
So what line is that on?
That's showing up in the capital
Okay.
line. It's
Because we did
mixed.
discuss that at the committee level.
Hmm?
We
Yes,
did discuss
yes.
that at our
I think
committee
it's something
level.
that came up at safety committee as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's smart. And we may have an option too that utilizes self-technology, and the city is using right now over at Bevis Hill. And it seems to be a pretty easy system, and I'd like to go that route. But we want to make some gate improvements as well before we can do that, because they're powered gates. They need to be adjusted, and some of the drive motors need to be replaced. Down below on the equipment maintenance, I mentioned in my little accomplishments spiel that I gave earlier, that it's important to maintain your equipment. And some of this was very expensive equipment. So $40,000 for maintenance on the UV system sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not when you consider the overall cost of that system. So this would be for replacing some of the UV bulbs that are used for, and this is a disinfection system. The last step before we discharge to the river, we run the water through UV lights to disinfect the water. So we would be replacing some of the lamps and some of the pieces and parts that make up the wiping system for it. It's a regular maintenance, and if you don't do it every year, you can end up with a situation where we'll violate our permit because we don't properly disinfect, and we'll fail our tests that we have to submit to the state.
And
So
harm the waters,
yes,
harm the waterways.
We won't be doing that.
No, we
No,
won't be
I
doing
think-
that.
and then some of that cost is also some of the 70,000 total for the equipment repairs. That includes some of the fluids that we use for our sludge dryer, which is a very high temperature oil, and also some the contracts for the maintenance on our generators that we have for the different vendors. And I'd also like to replace the tarp on our roll-off truck that we use for hauling sludge. We need to properly secure that load before we go across the road, and the truck is, I think it's an 05. So the truck is still usable. I just want to replace the tarp system for it.
Absolutely. Safety.
Okay, and then the sludge disposal, it's showing as 85,000. I think it should be less than that.
That's a
I'm not-
conservative number.
That's
We're hoping to
that's
be.
what I mean. I'm not
less.
saying that it should be lower. I'm just saying that there's
Yes.
a good chance that I'll underachieve on that. Because one of the things we did this summer, we put in some money into our sludge dryer, modernized the controls on it. And when that's reliably running, we go from hauling 2 to 4 times a week to once a month to the landfill. So it's a huge savings. So that's my hope. And it was down for quite a bit of time this year. So having a realistic number to base that on, I think that's why we went with the 85. But I think we can beat that. We'll be better than that, assuming everything works well with that. I mean, and I've been happy with its performance since we made the changes.
Plan for the worst.
Plan for the worst, yes. All right, I'll try to move along here. 35.
Fine. Take your time. Mhm.
So any questions on that page? Nope. The next one is 35. That's just not changing very much. And then 36 would be the revenues for sewer 6. Sure. So I think right now we're showing 50,000 as far as revenue for septic fees, which basically is the organic waste receiving. I think we can do better than that. I'd rather keep it at 50 and overachieve. All indications are that we're heading in the right direction. I've got some information I can't really share right now because it's not finalized yet, but we have, it looks like we'll be receiving our desired amount of trucks in the very near future. So we have ramped up. We've gone to, from one a week, and I think last week we've had 2 or 3 so far this week. But this would be a more defined scheduled delivery. So
Right. It's taken longer than all of us thought it was going to take. It was
Yes.
a little, crawl, walk, run situation.
and this is still all fog. It's
Right.
fats, oil, and grease. And I did get a confirmation from the consultant that we're using. Next week, they should have a package ready to submit to DEC to get the approvals for the additional waste streams. So we could take in beverage waste, brewery waste, and other food-related products, which would give us more flexibility, give us
Better chemistry,
better
right?
chemistry. as
Better
well.
chemistry, better chemistry.
But and having the ability to turn away trucks that we may not want and take what we really want and best benefit the plant and the town.
This is a more accurate and conservative number, but also keeping in mind safety and being mindful of those neighbors. And there's a lot of puzzle pieces that work together.
We're
But-
trying to find the sweet spot. That's
Mhm.
what we're trying to do.
Really good.
Trying to find where it's going to work for all parties.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions? We good? So the last group here is Water District 1, page 37. So it's going to be very similar to past years with the exception of the little bit of change in software costs for administration. That's just the ongoing increasing of software. It's inevitable.
Big change in the electricity line. Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
down in sources of supply.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. We have quite a bit of money still left in that line. this year.
We ended up paying it off. I don't think anyone knew quite the date of there had previously been an
This is Water 1 though.
Yeah.
Sewer 6 is the one that had.
Oh, sorry, no,
Yeah.
you're right. No, this is based on actuals now.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what we were, I think it was because of some of the repairs that we were needing at one point or something, but we were using a lot more electricity last year.
Yeah, so right now we're about just a little bit over half what was budgeted for use of electricity. So we can knock that down. If we produce more water, we would use more electricity, but we are contractually required to purchase a certain amount of water from the city. So it's something that we can work on.
Which we've been
That we're
trying.
trying to work
We've
on.
been trying.
But right now, I think that's fair to say that we wouldn't be using that much electricity. And some of the upgrades that we've made to the plant and to the water pump stations as part of the upgrade project increase efficiency of the operations too. So we should see some electric savings from that as well. You can see on there that the gate at the tower site is mentioned again for that capital improvement on that. Just increasing security at our towers. You good? Okay, let's see, the next one will be 38. That's the purification. That's still another line at the water plant itself. That's pretty flat across between years. And the next one is transmission and distribution. I mentioned the water main replacement on River Road between this GE Circle and Blatnick Park. That's shown in the 2000 line there under transmission and distribution. We're hoping, right now we have just over 500,000, I think it is right now, in money available for water main replacement. In the capital project for it, right? Yeah. And then we're looking to,
Okay, I'm sorry.
sorry,
Yeah, I
okay.
just heard someone else.
Oh, and then a portion of it would be hopefully funded by a grant that we're in the process of applying for. And then
There was also some specific reserves.
some reserve for it, yeah, yep. So the total 2.5 million estimated cost for that work would be funded by different sources. And we'll still go forward with the design and have the design ready to go and apply for the grant and do it the best we can. And based on what we get back as far as money for the grant, we may have to, adjust the scope of how far we replace on the road. But as long as we have the design, it's a good starting point. It's also very beneficial for applying for a grant when you already have a design, rather than just saying we'd like to do this.
Right, it's like we're ready.
Yeah,
We're
we're
ready.
ready. We're ready
We've
to
done
go.
the design work. We've already invested money in trying to get this done.
And part of that too, the work is to look at possibly upsizing the main. It's currently 12-inch main, but because we have such large users right along that stretch, they have 12-inch services that tap into our 12-inch main. So we want to make sure that we have adequate supply for all of our customers. Also down below, the meters. Recently reauthorized that agreement that we had with Thai Sales to purchase meters at a highly discounted price. I'd like to take advantage of that and begin replacing our meters, which are reaching 15 years of life, which is the life of the battery that's in the meter. So if we can purchase them now, begin over the next 3 years, begin purchasing the registers on the meters, replacing those, we can save 50% right off on the capital cost for those, and also avoid lost revenue because we're not properly recording the usage in the houses.
It's essential.
Yeah.
Will we be doing that with our in-house staff
Yes. Yeah.
Over time.
over time, right?
And we'll order as we go so that we don't have. I don't want to buy a bunch of meters, have them sitting in the garage, and then the clock starts ticking on the
On
battery.
the battery.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Next page is just employee benefits and just pretty much flat across between the years. Out of my control at least. And then the last page would just be the revenues, and that's also rate driven as well. So I want to thank Beth for everything she did to get those rates to a point which adequately fund our operation. Any questions? Good. All right, then. Thank you.
Thank you. I think
Thank
you
you.
explained everything very well, Matt. Thank you.
I tried to knock out these two.
It was the perfect balance.
You got the most pages, I think, of
Yeah.
anybody, so.
I got the least number.
What page are we starting on?
Well, I'm going to start with my accomplishments for 2023.
Okay.
So,
We're moving on to,
central data processing.
that's what I know. I want to say IT, but I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's a different name.
Listen, the town used to have an AS400, which was a mini computer, so that's why it's central data processing. So
Oh,
some
you
historical perspective.
You went in the weeds there.
I know, I know. And since I didn't get to write anything up, there were no Easter eggs this year, so I'm sorry. Okay. Still working on that flying cars thing from 4 years ago or 3 years ago. So this year, the highway department and the water department got a new fleet maintenance program, which should enable them to keep track of the financials along with the maintenance records, as opposed to having two separate systems, or actually three separate systems between the highway department and the water department. I've been helping along with Matt and Dan and Josh with the water treatment plant SCADA. There's a lot of IT that is going into that, including connections between the various pumping stations, and as well as there's going to be a new server down at the water treatment plant. Fix the Wi-Fi down at the wastewater treatment plant. We set up the network for the billing computer for the wastewater treatment plant, so that when the trucks come in, they can swipe a card, and from town hall, Janet and Beth's staff can go in and actually charge people for stuff. So in the water garage, we now have another offsite backup location. We're gonna, on the engineering department, Matt mentioned it, but I helped with integrating the GIS, the Schenectady County GIS system, and set up a system so that it was easy to link up to the maps and information that Dan and Nick were generating. So police department, we've got a virtual training system now with the whiteboard and computer integration. We did the body and dash cams and servers this year. And we're currently in the process of beta testing a new access program that will help the officers out in the field have better access back to town hall. So the courts, I've been accommodating their requests because they still have a lot of COVID rules. Most recently, there was a translator that was out. We were able to make it work so that they can continue with their court case with a virtual translator. So with the clerks, we've got dog license renewals, and I got to hand it to Michelle. I was planning on having the new website do the online payments, and obviously, as we discussed last night, that did not pan out. So at least we do have something for the residents to renew. We also did some improvements on the yard waste opt-out system, and I'm hoping to make it even better for next year. That's something that I program in-house. Okay. Comptroller's office, we did the Munis upgrade this year. Yes, and it seems to be good. I'm knocking on fake wood here. Okay. Parks department. We now have Wi-Fi at the senior center pavilion. I am in the process of working with Matt and Lori to get internet at Blatnick Wi-Fi. I'm going to try to get revenue generation either through advertising or offsetting it somehow, so that way the equipment is covered and the town's not actually paying for equipment down there and the internet service. So we also updated the senior center computer lab, which hadn't been touched in probably 5-6 years. Around the town, over 50 computers were replaced this year. We have a new remote system that allows users to, instead of screen sharing and having to have a desktop on their desk and also purchasing a laptop, so basically purchasing 2 computers per user, they now can take their laptops home or work from wherever and have access without having to have 2 systems. So we're not duplicating purchases anymore. We set up a TV for the signage and advertising out in the lobby. Let's see. We're in the process of doing the switch to the CrowdStrike that was provided by the state. We are currently in phase 1. We'll be moving to phase 2 by the end of the month, which is pretty much the main switch over. I also set up a new imaging server, which when a computer goes down or needs to be reinstalled, cuts the time from 4 hours down to 1 hour. So that helps my job. While the acceptance rate is not the greatest, there were 482 tickets filed and finished. Still trying to convince people to not pop their head into my office to file a ticket or not send me an email that gets buried by 800 other emails. So,
I'm at about 50% compliance.
well, listen, you're in charge. You get some special perks. So, the other major thing that we discussed last year that finally got through was the MOU with Rotterdam. Now, that basically gives the town a backup plan. It is a continuity plan. If the bus should hit me, the proverbial bus, you will have somebody that you can call that is familiar with municipal systems. There are a couple other things that were in that agreement that should help some cost savings when we're purchasing things, because then we can leverage the buying power of 2 towns instead of 1 town. And potentially co-locating backup sites, which will hopefully lower our backup costs in the future. So I think that covers most of it. I'm sure I forgot something, but that's good enough.
You didn't say anything about security, so tell us about security.
So after, I want to say it was a year and a half or so, I gave you guys a briefing with a fancy PowerPoint and that type of thing. All of the holes that I identified at that point are now closed. Obviously, this is an ongoing cat and mouse battle. It's never going to be over. I do the best I can, and going forward, I'm keeping the town within the guidelines of where we're supposed to be. So all those red things on that list from the PowerPoint over the last 2 years have been closed. So I'm happy about that. The training compliance, depends on the department, depends on how many reminders I send out, but we're about 85%. I wish we were higher. It's been well over 6 months, but I just got to keep hammering away.
I completed mine, correct?
I believe you did.
Yes, I did.
I believe you did.
Applied.
Yes.
Seth, can you talk about the website?
Yes. Oh, that was something else I meant to mention.
Yes.
Next week, next Thursday. So
That's amazing.
if you want anything changed, please let me know. Obviously, we can change it afterwards, but I'd prefer to have everything in order for launch day. It's going to be a hair chaotic because of the fact that there are over 10,000 people in our news alerts list that have to be added. When I had my interns during the summer, I had one of them write a script to basically take the exported list and have it imported, but that's going to take a few hours. Okay. So there's going to be a few things that might be a little glitchy on the first day, but it's kind of unavoidable because we can't import that list until the switch has been made. So, but I think all in all, everybody should be happy. The navigation on the new site is much better. It looks a lot cleaner. I think that it's worlds better than what we had. The employees that enter the information into the website like it. It seems to be a lot easier for them. So,
I think it'll be way more accessible for
oh yeah,
everyone.
you can translate the webpage into, I think, 35 languages, and that only gets more. And then there's also all the accessibility features. It forces us, when we're adding images, to stay within ADA compliance. So there's a lot of functionality there that we didn't have before.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
And you got resident participation.
Yes, I sent out an email asking for photos. I've started putting a bunch of them in. I have to reply to the residents. I apologize, residents. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you where your pictures are going to be. I just have to get there. There was about 35 emails. It was a very good response, and we're going to be collecting photos. I'd like, maybe once a quarter, or to update it and add more photos, because that'll keep the website fresh and looking new every time somebody comes to it.
Who's going to be doing that, updating and stuff? Or is the individual departments are going to have the person that's responsible for that? Because I know that was a bit of an issue with the old website.
The individual departments will be updating their own pages. The department heads that have committees will be able to update their meetings and agendas. The supervisor's office will still be responsible for the news and announcements. Obviously, I'll be helping with that. But all in all, it'll be taken care of by the department heads or their subsidiary. So I think Beth designated Janet to take care of the website. Matt's going to be taking care of his own, I believe. So yeah, it's all first. It's going to be firsthand information. It's not me doing it, because I don't, Matt can tell me as much as he wants how the water is treated, but it's not.
Oh, it's just more about having it more timely, right?
Absolutely. And correct, because I don't know his department. I don't know Beth's
Right.
department. I don't,
And
so-
when we were looking at vendors, that was a big component, was user interface, so that our employees could make those updates efficiently and effectively. And so far, we're hearing positive feedback.
It's point and click. So the old website was very convoluted. If you wanted to edit a page, you had to find the specifics. Like, you would hit edit, and there was 15 tabs on the left-hand side. There was 8 boxes on the right-hand side, and each tab had a different section. The left-hand side navigation, there's a little button when you log in, it says edit nav. You literally type in what you want, and it goes there. It's a point and click interface, as opposed to much more difficult process. It takes seconds to edit now, as opposed to, probably 10, 15 minutes to edit a page. So. Any other questions? My budget, I believe, is on page 6. So not much change from last year. We're still working on replacing the computers and upgrading the servers and switches. So basically modernizing our network. The only increases really are due to software maintenance renewals, the regular increases that we see every year. There is a little bit more added into the part-time services line because last summer I had a paid intern. I'd like to bring back a paid intern next year. And at some point, I'd like to increase the size of my department. There are projects I'd like to take on that I believe would be beneficial for the town. One that Matt and I have been discussing, is the volume of paper that is generated in the water department, and the lack or the difficulty of going back and tracking those things. That's where technology comes into play. And I believe at some point that, you know, and obviously the town is hiring more people, so that means more users for me. So, okay.
And
Well-
working across departments. You've
Mhm.
done a really nice job of working with the different departments and being innovative and integrating more technology into different departments to improve efficiency, effectiveness, productivity. So, I'm glad you're bringing that to us now in preparation for upcoming years, because we do need to move with the times and change with the times. That's why we had to update the website, update the phone system, update the website, update safety protocols,
More cameras.
more
around town.
cameras.
I'm working with the police department right now to work on a grant, hopefully to add more LPRs, license plate reading cameras. So, if they're investigating a case, they have a license plate number, or there's an Amber Alert like we had a couple weeks ago, you can enter the license plate number and it will alert the police department when that car or that license plate passes. So it's pretty cool tech.
That is cool.
So any other questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much.
All right. And
Would anybody like to take maybe a 5 or
need a
10
break?
minute break?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll return.
It's fine. No worries.
Okay, Seth, Miss P is ready.
All right.
All right, welcome back to the conclusion of, we'll be talking about the revenues and then the conclusion of our budget workshop series. And we'll hear from our town comptroller now.
All right. And for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Beth Greenwood. I'm the town comptroller. In terms of accomplishments this year for our department, we survived our software upgrade with Munis, which was quite exciting at times. Anytime you take the entire financial and personnel management systems of the town and upgrade that and change it, it is definitely a challenge, and the department came through that all right. And we also wrapped up this year the changeover of our banking. The RFP had gone out prior to my arrival to switch over to JP Morgan Chase. They were better able to handle the volume of the town, and we have completed that switch over now as well. They've been wonderful to work with. We've been very happy with that. We also renegotiated a couple of the contracts for the various unions this year. We were part of the team for that, and we also did a lot of work with taking a look at our health insurance, the way we were administering that, the company we were using. We were able to take our post-65 retirees and join a consortium, so it significantly decreased the costs both to the town and to those retirees, and improved the level of service we were able to offer them. So we was very, very pleased with that. And then for our both our active employees and our retirees that are pre-65, we were able to change our administrator and then renegotiate a better rate. We originally were told our health insurance was going to be a 9.9% increase, which was rather daunting. We got that below 6%, and that's including the fees and whatnot. So we were very happy with that. It's still a significant expense. Our employees obviously are both our greatest expense, but also more importantly, our best asset for the town. So in our department, we work very hard to ensure that we are taking care of our employees, honoring all of the union contracts that we have, and just making sure that we give them the best possible service, paying them on time and correctly, making sure that their health insurance is taken care of, dental, vision, all of that sort of stuff, anything that they need, interfacing with retirement and whatnot, we do that as well. We are starting to see a slight uptick in our use of our EAP program. I'm really happy to report that's something that we've really been encouraging employees to reach out if they have any needs for themselves or their families. We do pay for an EAP option, and I'm really happy to start seeing that get a little bit more use. I, again, like to encourage everybody to continue to consider that as an option. They have a lot of good services that people can use. Anything else that we've done this year that you can think of? Mostly we just try to keep everything upright and moving forward on a daily basis. So that is enough of a challenge for us. I was just going to quick review the comptroller section before I go into the revenues. That is on page 2. You won't see much changes in there. The one thing I would like to ask for, this may not be the year for it, but to think forward for the town is looking at the department. One area where I think we could do better is in our accounts receivable. Right now, we have various departments bill out for different things in the town, but we don't really have a one-stop shop for tracking everything that the town bills out that's not the big like tax bills or utility bills, but there's a lot of other little ones and twos of things that get billed out. And I would like to better track what we're billing out and ensure that we're getting that revenue in. I don't want us to be leaving money on the table for that. And closely related to that, as we're pursuing more and more grants, I would really like to have somebody who tracks the grants better for us, basically from inception to closeout. Not necessarily the application side of it, but the actual nuts and bolts of how much money are we actually getting in, tracking all those expenses, tracking all the receipts, making sure that's all properly submitted for reimbursement and so forth. So that having somebody who basically covers those accounts receivable and grants types of tracking, I think, would be very useful. Unfortunately for our office, the state keeps mandating additional things, as does the GASB authority, which is something we live under, that tells us what we have to do and what we have to track. Unfunded mandates are the nature of our work, and we have a lot of them. We have 5 of us in the staff, which seems like a lot until you see how much has to be done and reported on. And so that's where the accounts receivable side of it is something I think that we don't currently devote enough time to. And I think it would be valuable to consider that in the future. So otherwise, you don't see any real changes in our department. We're operating as we have, same amount of staff. We are continuing to use our HR consultant. We have found them to be very helpful. They've helped us keep our employee handbook up to date and concurrent with any of the changes in the state law. We have kept the money in for the grant writer, which has also been a very helpful thing, especially looking at some of the bigger ticket items that we have coming down the road. Infrastructure-wise, I think that's a very valuable person to keep. We do have the consultant services for the DEI group available, and we also continue to employ our auditor every year to take a look at our books and move us from what we do is basically a cash management style, and they translate that through generally accepted accounting principles into the financial statement that we receive at the end of each year. So, anyone have any questions on that section? All right, we can shift over to revenues. And I gotta dig through to find the page for that.
I think the grant writer amount looks good,
Okay,
but it may need to get bumped up just a little.
okay, I will circle that.
I think the actuals this year was maybe like, I don't know,
I can double check that.
10, 12.
It went down from what was budgeted in the year prior.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Okay,
I'll follow up with you about that as
okay,
well.
I made a note to myself.
Thank you.
All right, revenues begin for the general fund on page 18. And I will do, as I did last year, after we finish here, I will scrub through the revenues. Now that we've gotten 3/4 of the way through the year, I like to go back and just verify that we are on track with where we were a couple months ago when we put this together, and then update the revenues accordingly. I tend to be extremely conservative the first time I go through. And then if I see we're actually really holding on track, then I'll bump things up a little bit more to where I think is a little more realistic. So I'm a little bit of a pessimist the first go round. I think that's safer. And then I go revisit. So we've updated several pilots this year. I get that information from Eric as he gets that from the county. So you'll see that's up a little bit. Let's see. We're waiting on the county sales tax numbers. We don't have a good number yet from them. This is the year that last year was last year that we had a solid number for. So I've got basically a placeholder in there, and I'll be looking to update that with the county when I can get that from them. Going down through, we have seen most of our fees for the clerk's department increasing this year. People seem to have really settled back into normal business post-COVID. So we're seeing a lot of those things just creeping up a little bit. Any questions on the initial page? Next page. We had discussed when Laura was here that we needed to add in the line that was for the vacant home registration, which I will do. That will show at least $6,000 of revenue anticipated for next year, and I'll double check that. It may be a touch higher. Just of note, the yard waste disposal fee, I had mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate it. We will need to raise that to $61 this next year. It's currently at $58, I believe, just because of the increase in tipping fees and whatnot, and in contractual labor that we use for that. I still think that that's quite a good fee amount for people. It's unlimited yard waste that they can be putting out. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that service. And I think $61 is a reasonable cost for that. Okay, are there any questions along? Yes. Oh, yes, I should have circled that one. So here is my dilemma with this one right now. We increased fees significantly last year, and we are not going to make even the revenue, which was significantly less last year. We were hoping to get up to 56,850 to match the cost of running the transfer station. We're not going to make that this year, from what I'm seeing. I will double check that. And obviously, with the tipping fees increasing as we're expecting them to, I really don't know how we balance that service. We just do not have enough people who use that service that the town provides to actually have it pay for itself. We lose money. We've been losing money on this. I know that the people who do use it are very attached to it. I've done a little bit of initial looking. Clifton Park does have a transfer station, and they do allow out-of-town users. Theirs costs an out-of-town resident $150 a year to use theirs, and it's just right over in Rexford. My concern is if we increase our fees to match what we would need them to be to run this transfer station, that we would actually be more expensive, that would cost people more to continue to use our transfer station than it would for them to be an out-of-town user in Clifton Park. So I haven't done extensive research on that yet, and I really haven't calculated where we would need to increase our fees. But I think that it might be well worth revisiting that conversation again this year on whether to keep that transfer station open or whether to, encourage residents to consider possibly using another option.
How many people are using it?
I need to look right now. I didn't have, when I talked to the clerk's office, they didn't have their solid numbers yet for what they'd seen so far this year, but the numbers were down just from what we're seeing in terms of the.
Right, so I think that's of interest, right? We understand the financial end of it, but then also about the number of residents
Right.
that actually use the
And
program.
that's part of the, unfortunately, I haven't gotten into the depth of analysis I'd like to with that yet. I need their numbers to do that.
Something's got to be considered.
Yeah, it's hard to spread fees across a lot of residents for only a few residents who use a service.
So I will have crunched some numbers within the week for that. We were just starting to collect them. So it's but I don't think it's looking very positive, unfortunately.
And we did a 5-year cost benefit analysis last year.
We did. And I can
And-
add on to that with
Okay.
this year's numbers once I've got those solid numbers. But yeah, it's lost a little bit more money each year, and this one looks like it was a fairly significant jump from what we're seeing. All right. The next page, we have a placeholder we had mentioned previously, the bottom line in the top section for the EV charging stations. We took a quick look at that. We've still only received a 1 quarter's revenue from that. So we're trying to look into that to have a better number than what we've got in there. We don't have data to go off of yet. So we're working on that. I know we had a bit of a conversation when the justice courts were up here that we are seeing more volume move through the courts. That's been improving this year. I think, again, that's a lot of the backlog that had happened during COVID is starting to move through.
Yeah, but they can't collect the money.
Unfortunately, not quite as efficiently as they used to now. But
As the judge told us.
yeah. So, I mean, we never really look at that as a revenue stream, but we do still have to. be
Well,
attached to
it goes
funds.
into our funds
It
and it helps
does.
support the court system.
Absolutely.
But again, they're not able to collect on the citations.
Okay, the next page.
Can you talk about at the bottom of that 20 reimbursement of wages?
Sure. Yep. So that is, for example, if we have somebody out disability or workers' comp and we get reimbursed for their time.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the interest earnings a little bit?
Yes, I think we have had, yeah, that's at the very top of the page.
Yeah.
You'll see that that has climbed significantly. With the interest rates as high as they've been, we've been making a lot more money on our investments. We use NICLAS. There are two major options for municipalities in New York, NILAF and NICLAS. NICLAS actually compounds daily. So we have been using NICLAS because of that reason. It's a little bit more work for our staff. What we literally do is we wait until the day prior to needing the money. So whether it's for a payroll or an AP run, we calculate exactly how much we're going to need to meet our bills that week. We wait until the day before we need to pay them, and then we shift the money from our investments back into our accounts. We've been able to maximize our interest, and by the end of this year, across the various funds, we will have earned about $1 million in interest by doing that. So it's a little bit more onerous for us. But it allows us to increase what we're actually bringing back into the town. So it's been kind of fun for us. We're kind of geeking out a little bit on, ooh, what's the interest rate now? How are we doing on a day-to-day basis? And we have a little bit of fun with that. But it's been a really good way for us to make sure that we're being good stewards of the town's money. So. And right now it looks like those rates are going to stay high, and I will be recalculating that as well. That was a conservative number. But it looks like they're probably going up at least one more time this year, and then they should hold for a while. I don't expect them to go down significantly over the next at least 6 months, just from what I've been reading. So, bad time to buy a house and get a mortgage, great time to be invested. So, one of those. All right, next page on 21. We did not see any change to our CHIPS or our AIM or any of those standard monies that we get from the state. Mortgage tax has been up a little bit from what we've been seeing. It kind of dipped a little bit, but it seems to be back up a little. So it'll be interesting to see how the interest rates affect that.
Again, best to be conservative.
Yes, and that's why that's a fairly conservative number there. So. All right, and on page 22, one number you'll see here on the interfund transfers, the number, the top one that says from drainage districts. Should the consolidation of the drainage districts go through that, and we'll pull the storm sewers out of this portion of the budget, that line will disappear out of here, because then there will be a dedicated fund that manages all the drainage districts and storm sewers, rather than moving money into the general fund to have the highway guys do stuff. That we'll actually be able to bill it properly all out of one place. That's part of the, it seems kind of silly, but when we have things that we administer both fiscally and administratively completely separate from one another, it's very hard to think of them as a complete unit. And I really do think that moving the drainage districts and storm sewers together into that consolidated unit, it'll allow us to think of them much more holistically. It allows us better to administer them, certainly from a financial standpoint, as well as a unit. And then that way too, when we're looking at a study on all the stormwater and the drainage issues we're having, it's looking at all of those in one piece. And it allows us to fund it a lot easier to do that. And hopefully, it'll just help us to plan long-term to take care of the water issues that we've got. Okay. Any questions on this page? All right, we can shift to highway revenues. And that begins on 26. Again, at the top, you see a reflection of the pilots. As they've changed over time, that one has dropped a little bit for the highway. The general fund pilots increased a little bit. Those fluctuate. Some of the fire districts get pilot money as well. And that's all based on the agreements that are managed out of house. You see the interest earnings up significantly here as well. I've dropped the permit fees way back based on what we've seen with Verizon. We're not going to meet that revenue line this year. It's hard to tell when they're pulling all these permits for the work they're doing, and they front loaded a whole bunch of them, and then they've kind of backed off this year. So I was very conservative with next year. Now, having done that, my guess is it'll be back up again because that seems to be my luck. But I backed that back off to where we would expect a more normal level. You can see on here for the sale of equipment, we're reflecting the vehicles that Ray had earmarked to sell this year. They've done very well with their equipment sales in the last couple of years. They really watch the market well and get them to auction at the right time to maximize their return on any of the equipment that they sell. They've done quite well with that. So. Right. The next page, and you'll just see there that the CHIPS Pave New York money has stayed relatively constant. I'm going to verify that with the letter, make sure that number is what we expect it to be. I haven't seen the actual hard copy of that letter yet. Any questions on this page? Okay. Sewer 1 revenues begin on page 31. The one place we've seen go up there, again, interest earnings are up a good bit. We're anticipating the sale of some equipment there more than usual, so that's up a little bit. Otherwise, that's fairly consistent, and we'll start seeing the new rates with the spring billing, so we should start seeing that revenue actually come to where we expect it. Any questions on Sewer 1 revenues? Sewer 6 begins on page 36. I think Matt already covered the one point of interest here pretty well. We've been very, very conservative with those septage fees. That program started a little slower than we anticipated this year, but it did get going. It's consistent now. We are getting the billing out every month. We're getting money in every month. It's slowly increasing. So I feel confident that we will make 50,000 next year, possibly more. I'll look at where we are and I may adjust that just a little bit. But I'm comfortable with that number, and I really do feel like we'll start moving in the right direction with that. So it's very nice to see that finally online. And the last section of revenue is page 40 for the water fund. The one increase you'll see there is the sub-rental of facilities. That increase is due to all the various agreements that Elena has renegotiated this year for the antennas and whatnot that are on the water tanks. So we are actually seeing a pretty good increase there, which is great. She did an excellent job with those. It was really good. And our interesting earnings are up as well there, which is nice to see. Everything else is fairly consistent. Also expecting some additional sale of materials. So. Any questions on the water revenues? All right, this is all kinds of exciting. All right, special districts. I get all the fun stuff at the end. So thank you so much for your patience. So this is where you're seeing, these are all the drainage districts. So you'll see the map when we have the board meeting on next Tuesday, or Tuesday after next. But we have, I believe it is 36 as you go through the various pages. The numbers randomly jump around a certain amount. I do not know why. It's before my time, so I will not try to figure out why. But we've got, I believe it's 36 drainage districts. They're just little tiny pockets all over town, and they're all kind of managed individually right now. We do have the highway guys keeping an eye on them. They do the mowing and the trimming to the best of their abilities. That's why this mower that was requested that'll actually be purchased equally across all these drainage districts to keep those Phragmites down is a big deal. So they're very excited about that. And then having these all considered, the drainage districts are almost all like little holding ponds, and that whereas the storm sewers are actually the piped water. So looking at both portions of that system in terms of the MS4 distribution across the town should give us a better understanding of where we're having problems with the water, where it's not draining as well as we'd like it to, where it's backing up. I know talking to Matt, some of the storm sewers are very, very old, but a lot of them were just kind of put in piecemeal over time. So thinking about them holistically, I think should be a really good starting point to fixing some of the places where we've had residents very unhappy with the amount of water that backs up when we get these heavy rains. Following that, we have the lighting districts. These are just sections of town, and again, just kind of little pockets here and there where there's street lighting. And we've adjusted each of these based on what we're seeing actually for the cost of electricity. So each of these just pretty much is electric bills for the lighting in those various areas. And finally, we have the park districts, and these are for like the little pocket parks. These aren't the big major parks. Each one of these little areas has just a small associated neighborhood with a little pocket park. And the funds here are just to make sure that those are maintained. If there's equipment there, if it needs a repair here and there, I know periodically we have little pieces that need new swings or this or that or the other, new mulch for the playground mulch, in addition to the mowing and trimming that they require over time. And those are generally done by our highway department guys, or our parks department rather. So the money's collected in each of those districts and then transferred over to the general to cover the cost of the parks department doing those works. So, and that is, as they say, that, unless anyone has any questions.
I do. Let's
All
go
right.
back to the beginning.
Sure.
All right. So we've got about 2.375 use of fund balance, right, in this budget?
Yes, it does
Okay.
have. Mhm.
Of that, how much of that is actually money that we're going to be using to pay off bans?
So if you go, the easiest way to see that is at the end of each set of appropriations. So for example, with the A fund, let me grab a page for you.
I just want to minus those numbers, those ban numbers from that.
Okay, the bans and bonds are on page 17 for the general fund. So for the general fund this year, bond anticipation notes, we're paying $365,266 for, that's the short-term debt. And just above it is the bonded, which is the long-term debt, which is $132,380. So the long-term debt falls off a little each year. Unfortunately for us, the short-term, the bond anticipation notes, that short-term rolling debt is going to increase for the next several years before it falls off. So each fund has a chunk of that. So in highway, the portion of that would be, flip to that page for you. That is on page 25. So for the highway, bond anticipation notes this year is $322,456, and the longer term debt on highway this year is $233,876. So a bit over half, almost $600,000 for highway. And close to $500,000 for general fund. And then
Yep.
each of the
Yep.
other funds, water and sewer, they each have debt that's being paid off as well Do you want those numbers also? Yep. So that would
Well,
be,
because our big number's 2.3, right? That's everything.
right. And that's only being taken from general and highway fund. So it only is applied against general and highway fund balance. And each of the other funds have their own fund balance.
Okay, so this 2.3 is just highway in general.
Correct.
Okay, so of that, we basically 1 million of that we're paying
A
off.
little better than 1 million
A
is
little
debt
better
service.
than 1 million we're paying off.
Yes.
No bonds and
And
bands, if you
correct.
will.
Yep.
Okay, that's an important number. I
Yeah.
think for all of us to sort of get our heads wrapped around it, right? Because when you look at that big number, well, that's a big number. But then when you do this calculation that I'm doing here, that we're doing,
Yes.
okay, we're paying off $1 million, over $1 million in debt.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No,
I-
that's a good point.
No, that,
So-
I thought so. Anyway, my next question, and you knew this was probably coming. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I'm still waiting for my projections, right? My 5 years. I talked about that last year. I
Yep.
kind of talk about it every year,
So
right?
yep. And what we've done now, we have our debt service pushed out for several years. And this is the first year that we are not incurring any additional debt as of right now.
Mhm.
So as we're paying off, and I can show you on the projections, but next year we have more short-term debt that we're paying off, and the year after that, quite a bit more. And then it starts tapering off. But what we've done now is by rolling all of our capital purchases into the budget and trying to normalize, my thing that I'm working with all the various department heads is scheduling out. We've been starting to look at the fleets. One of the things Matt was talking about, he had kind of stopped buying trucks for a while. And I said that we don't want to do that. What we want to do is make it so that we replace a little bit every year, right? Because then we normalize our expenses. So
Similar to what we do in the police department.
correct.
Now, they don't need to do it every 3 years like the police department does,
Right.
but they need to do it
But
every
they usually
7.
have one, and their things are a lot more expensive, right? I mean, a dump truck is ridiculously expensive. So only replacing one thing, but they're replacing something every year so that they're keeping things at a good working place. Part of that too has a very significant impact on our repair costs. That's one of the things I'm looking for as well with the software Seth is working with both water and sewer and highway on. In aviation, we call it maintenance man hours per flight hour. We don't track that right now at the municipal level, and we really should have a better understanding of how much maintenance, both in terms of parts and time, we're putting into any given piece of equipment so that we can have an intelligent decision on at what point is it not worth repairing anymore and we should be replacing it, and then overlapping that with our replacement schedule. Again, these are all these building blocks we've got to get in place to have a really solid foundation. We're getting there. At this point, I fully anticipate that by rolling the costs in that we have done, and now we're budgeting for them intentionally, and we can basically keep our budget aligned with what we're seeing of inflation. That'll take care of our increases in both our personnel costs and our equipment and repair costs. If we've got everything accounted for in that budget, then our budget should be able to just carry on with what we're seeing in terms of inflation year to year and fully meet the needs of what we do right now. Now, if we want to expand services, do new things, then we have to make other decisions. But to keep things going at the status quo, now that we've got everything rolled into the budget, we should be able to do that without borrowing by keeping up with inflation.
Right, well, sometimes you might have to borrow, but again.
Right,
you
for
wanna
large
have
things,
that-
for example, the water towers, that's going to be a big project. That'll probably have to be,
I want to get that 5-year plan, right? Because you already talked about it. I
Mhm.
think you need to put, if you can, something together for us for the board level, okay, of the projections that you're talking about, because you haven't, you know what they are. You know, but we don't. Like, okay, we got to pay off this, and then year 3, it's going to be even a bigger number of those things you're discussing right now.
Mhm.
So that can help us plan for the future. Because it is important, right? We go year to year, and most municipalities do. But as you said, I think we can do a better job if we do a little more long-range planning
Yeah.
while we're doing that.
As I'm reviewing your initial presentation, I see, a very informative slide about the ban, and then the information about I think this would be helpful for Bill, really naming the specific numbers for, paying off the bands 2020 through 2022.
Yeah, and you
Seeing
did
that.
that originally. Maybe you could even give me a paper copy of that, and you had the graph about the fund
Mhm.
balance, which I said was extremely helpful, right?
Right.
Because, that's a big buzz, right? Oh, you're spending this, but when you look at it over time, it's really not that bad.
No.
Right?
Well, and and part of it too with fund balance is we don't want to have too much because then that's money we've taken in from people that we don't need, right?
I'm
So
in
it's finding
agreement.
that balance.
I am in agreement
So
with that.
it's having a healthy fund balance that's enough, but not over collecting.
Absolutely.
So absolutely.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And a couple years ago, we were getting too much fund
Mhm.
balance.
Yep. And it's, as you can see in the budget, there's a whole lot of guessing involved and we do our best to get the best possible guess, but it's a moving target.
Right,
So
because you're,
Yep.
as you just said, you don't want to have too much. You need to get that sweet spot because let's say somebody lived in the town for 5 years and they paid their taxes for those 5 years and we just kept building up fund balance, right? They really maybe didn't benefit from us not increasing their taxes or flat tax rates and stuff like that if they happen to move out of the town or something when they should have.
Yep.
It's fair. We need to be fair with it.
any other questions?
That's all I had.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that's all we have for our budget workshops for the 2023 tentative budget. We will, as a board, revisit and see if there's any additional changes that we recommend making, and those will be incorporated into the preliminary budget. Just as we're here, is there anything that anyone would like to propose in terms of adjustments or changes?
As I mentioned at our first budget workshop, I do think the alarm fees in the police department are something worth at least looking into and continuing the discussion. I think originally, many, many years ago, the purpose of that fee was because the police department was monitoring the alarms, which hasn't been done for quite some time. So I do think it's worth looking into and seeing how we can better that process and maybe save our residents that fee every year. I spoke very briefly with Chief Goshen the other night after our workshop about it, and we just tossed some ideas back and forth. Maybe the possibility of charging a little bit extra for people who have frequent false alarms. So right now, everybody who has an alarm is charged that fee. But maybe we stop charging everybody that fee, but people who have continuous false alarms get charged a fine for essentially using the resources when they're not needed.
Yeah, I think it is something we can look at because it's changed, as you said.
Right.
It used to be, you were monitored by the police department. Well, then it went over to the UCC, right?
And even when it was at the UCC, I mean, we pay the county an amount of money for the use of the UCC essentially, but now
Yeah.
the UCC doesn't monitor those alarms either.
No.
So at
No,
some
but-
point that sort of got lost, I think.
I kind of go back and forth on it with the fee because I think it's more important that we get have these things registered. And I think there is a fee, like I said earlier, with the dog licensing and that sort of thing, so that we have an idea of who has these alarms. And now with the ones that are on the, you buy it and you just put it in yourself and it's monitored by your Wi-Fi and the internet. And then you might have an external alarm or have an alarm in your house that's going off and then your neighbor doesn't know about it. And then we don't know because we have no registration mechanism.
Mhm.
So, I think we need to continue that because they can be a public nuisance, if you will. If it's not a registered, if you will, alarm, that we have an idea of possibly how to get a hold of the homeowner or somebody on their call list.
And it's my understanding, as I'm looking over the previous resolution, this topic was revisited in 2021, and the resolution was offered by the previous supervisor, and it set the alarm rates,
So at that point, the UCC was probably still monitoring the alarms.
2021.
I don't know. We'd have to look
Yeah,
back.
I'd
I
have
don't
to look back.
remember I don't
I know it
remember when
was-
we had to get away from that because of the age of the equipment and stuff.
It was within the last few years. I don't know exactly when. I mean, one supervisor said it was 21, that resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may have been somewhere around there, maybe.
It was in, it looks like,
It was at some point within the last 2 or 3 years, I would say, when the UCC stopped monitoring those alarms.
Yeah. I think it gets more complicated when the expectation, from what I understand, I could be wrong, is that if my alarm goes off, I expect 2 officers on duty to come to my home.
Absolutely.
So these are people who are opting into that special program, kind of like opting into the waste facility that we have, that we're like, well, if only a few people are using it, why should everyone maybe have to pay for that? So just like a dog permit, I wouldn't say like, well, why do I have to pay for a dog permit? Like, I do, it's just, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
it's
no,
just the process, and because why should everybody else who doesn't have a dog have to pay for me to have a dog? So that's where I get stuck, is people are asking for a special program for themselves, for our police officers to respond, when
Well-
other people are not opting into that.
And I definitely see that side of it. And that's why I also keep going back and forth. But then so on that same hand, I think using that example, should we charge? I mean, I'm not saying we should do this, but why wouldn't we charge for every police call then? I mean, if someone's burglar alarm goes off and we're essentially charging them to respond because they're paying that annual fee, but if somebody gets into a fight or if their house is broken into, we don't charge for that. So why should we charge to respond to a burglar alarm? It's a service that I guess I feel is covered by taxes because our tax dollars support our police department. But then, like you said, also, not everybody has a burglar alarm, so why should everybody have to
They get like 2,
pay that.
I think be wrong.
I think it's 2 a year.
Yeah, well, and the point is, it's really a registration fee. In the past, you could get your monitoring from the town or the UCC, and you paid that. Now you don't pay that anymore. So I have an alarm. It used to be, I think the registration.
Well, I think that fee is all together, isn't it?
No. It used to be your registration fee was like $50 or $60. And then your monitoring fee was on top of that. So maybe it was, and don't quote me on these numbers, please, but it was on top of that. Then when the UCC and the town did not monitor anymore, that piece of it went away. That piece of it went
there wasn't
away.
additional-
You had to contract with somebody, a private company, to
Right.
then monitor your alarm. But the fees that we have now, it's a registration fee. That's
So if the
fee.
alarm terminated here at the Niskuna Police Department Dispatch Center, there was an additional fee for that
There was.
on
yeah.
top of the registration? fee?
Yeah, because you could have had, you had your choice even back then. You could have the town monitor your alarm, or you could have had a
Right.
private company monitor your alarm, and then they would call the town dispatch or UCC.
Mhm.
And that that was a choice you had. And then when we got out of monitoring, which again, it had many reasons, equipment was old, liability reasons, all different reasons, different technology. That fee, that part of it went away, but we kept the registration fee for even commercial buildings and residential.
so are you recommending we change the fee for this budget cycle?
I think continue the conversation to see if it's possible. I mean, I just had a thought, what about something similar to like we do with the yard waste program where you can opt out? So if somebody was paying, I'll just say, I don't know, Simply Safe, X number of dollars per month, and they didn't want the town to monitor, to keep track of their responders and their key holder list, then they could opt out. And if you didn't opt out by such and such date, then you were charged. And if you didn't pay, it was levied on your taxes, similar to what we do with the yard waste.
The one thing I'm wondering about is what happens when I don't have,
I think,
maybe I don't want to announce this out loud. I don't have an alarm. But what happens when, let's say that case is someone has an alarm
Mhm.
and they go through their alarm company
Mhm.
and let's say they're not home and their alarm goes off. What happens?
Their alarm company contacts them. So
And
when
then,
somebody
and then they
purchases a burglar
determine
alarm-
whether, sorry, go ahead.
No,
yes.
So when somebody purchases a burglar alarm, the same information they register with us, which is their key holder list, their responders, emergency contacts, they register with their alarm company. So let's just say you had ADT and your alarm goes off. ADT is going to call you to see if you set the alarm off by accident. If you didn't, or if they don't reach you, then they're going to call the contacts that you have registered. So I
Or
think,
they'll call the police department.
right.
Or your neighbors.
Right.
So what
If you don't
happens when your
respond.
neighbors call the police department in that case?
Right. And I think
'Cause
that's-
that could
that's something-
happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it
Oh, yeah.
Like,
does
oh, my
happen.
neighbor's
That's-
alarm is going off and it won't
That's my
stop.
point about the
Right, and I think-
registration. That's
right.
why we have the registration, because if you don't have your alarm monitored, and your neighbor calls about it, and then the police go and respond, then they have a registration, which we charge that fee for, and then they can look at what your own phone number is, and then who's on your call list. And I think
we-
there's a town code though, and I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying
there
about
is.
changing it, so we would have to change our town code.
So I think town code says that we set the fees, but I don't think it says what the fees are. I can
No,
be, I could be,
yes.
is that correct?
The town
board
board
sets-
sets the fees.
By resolution,
By resolution.
right? But the actual fee isn't in town code, just that we set the fee.
But I
We
think
set it,
in
which is
that-
why it was last set in 2021.
in the code, does it require a resident to register their alarm?
I believe so.
Yes.
I think it does.
Mhm.
Because if your alarm's going off and I'm your neighbor, I'm not necessarily like nuisance by it. I'm worried about you.
Right.
I'm gonna call and say.
Is
"There's
that-
gonna Be a problem at this point.
Do we know where that information is kept? I mean, do all of the patrol cars have a binder or a file on their computers with that information?
I don't know, but we could ask him because you're trying to work with them, aren't you, on getting more of this, that they can get some of these records? Is that right?
So to answer one question that
Is the mic
came
on?
up. Yeah, it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To answer one question, 2020 was the last year that the town was doing monitoring. The system was left on for an additional 6 months into 2021, just to make sure that if there were any stragglers and there were alarms, that we would be able to differentiate and get, advise that person, remind them to get off the system.
Get off, right?
The town was stopped monitoring in 2014 probably. And then the UCC took it over until 2012
Correct.
or 2020, sorry.
It all essentially went into a computer system and was automated as far as I know. So, and the system was costing more
Right.
than what they were bringing in for the monitoring. So I believe they have access to a list, but not out in the field. So they have to call back.
Call back to the station or come back to the station. But those, and these are things you're working on with
That is
them.
correct. That's part of that new remote access system I'm working on. So they have more access to more of the information. So.
So again, just me thinking out loud, I guess, if that information isn't readily available, if it's here at the station and now the officer gets the call for the burglar alarm, goes to the house, determines there's an emergency, has to come off the road back to the station to get the information, what are we charging for?
Well, during the
that-
day, you'd be able to call here and somebody in the office be able to give them that information. But to your
Right.
point, right,
Right? I
at
if-
night when when there isn't
Can I
somebody there.
interject for 1 second? I believe the sergeant that's on duty has the list.
Okay.
So
In the-
they don't actually have to drive back here to get, the information. So.
That makes sense. That the sergeant would have it.
So I have an alarm. I'm perfectly fine with paying it. It's just a sense of comfort, I guess, in my opinion, that your alarm's registered with the town. They have a list, they send you a bill, and then they ask for make sure your list is updated. For me, it's kind of a comfort thing.
Well, I don't want to pay for your comfort.
Well, no, I pay for it, and I don't have a problem with that,
Right.
I
It's
don't.
a lot to consider.
you know?
Mhm. And what's your code on your alarm?
That was really funny. Okay. Well, I thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
I know I'm looking here at a resident email about this from January 18th of 2023. So definitely, I've had one resident email about it, and then I also have an approximate cost. So Chief Koshin ran, a rough estimate, and the cost for police response for the 2022 false alarms would be $32,500. So, this could,
I'm sorry, I said 32,500 was the cost of false alarms.
like the cost
right.
for
Right,
responding to
response,
them.
Right.
So, that could justify revisiting the fee
Mhm.
amount so that it may more closely match the estimated manpower, the human power to
Mhm.
respond to that. And it would have to be, I would always recommend, trying to use data to make
Absolutely.
that decision.
Mhm.
And it would be by board resolution. Um, I don't anticipate those analyses being done to make a decision for this budget cycle, but
But we can,
we can continue to discuss and ask for, Chief Koshin to revisit those numbers. He sent me this, a couple months ago. So, well, actually, no, he sent this to me.
Yeah, I'd also be
Recently.
interested in knowing how many false alarms there were, because that means, which I don't think you can even put a number on, those are officers off our roads. Those are officers.
No, he did
Yeah.
325 false alarm calls, meaning we are averaging almost one false alarm call per day annually. The average cost of an officer per hour is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 per hour. Alarm call generally, that's factoring in salary, benefits, equipment. Alarm call generally requires 2 officers and probably taking average a half hour to complete. So a rough estimate, the cost would be about $32,500 for police response.
and the revenue we expect from those alarm fees is somewhere around 60,000, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if we were to increase the fee for false alarms, and I wouldn't suggest doubling it, but if we were to somehow add to it and only have a fee for false alarms, then we could probably make up the difference that we'd be losing in the revenue. But again, what would be requiring somebody to register their alarm, I guess is the question.
And I also think in the analysis, we should look at the differences for false alarms by residents and commercial.
Yeah,
Because it's different.
it is.
There's a
Definitely.
difference. So I think we need to try to maximize.
Mhm.
And
And I do think it's
use
important.
those false alarm fees to hopefully deter people
And that
from
was
having ongoing false alarms.
that was the conversation I had with the chief a couple days ago. Was if we do increase the fee for false alarms to recoup, to make up for the revenue that we lose with the fee, maybe it'll deter people from accidentally setting off their alarm and save on the manpower hours and the equipment and the wear and tear on the vehicles in the long run.
That's fair.
So.
Okay. Well, we will continue to revisit the alarm fee questions and identify a proper fee that will help
Balance.
balance. Well, if there's nothing else for tonight, then this concludes our budget workshop. Thanks, everybody, for
Thank
your
you.
participation.
Thank you, Beth.
And thank you, Beth. We appreciate you. And have a good night.